and I grabbed a fire extinguisher, and I don't know if it was Andy Petrie, but somebody came across in front of me, and I mowed them down, and I ran straight for that barrel.
The tracks, the history, the people. This is Zach at the Track.
If you don't know the name Cliff Champion, well, you should. Because let me tell you, this guy is probably the most well-traveled crew chief in NASCAR's glory years. I want y'all to do me a favor and just listen to this list of some of the people that he's rubbed shoulders with in the NASCAR garage area. Richard Childress, NASCAR Hall of Famer. Cale Yarborough, NASCAR Hall of Famer. Alan Kulwicki, NASCAR Hall of Famer. Benny Parsons, NASCAR Hall of Famer. Ricky Rudd, NASCAR Hall of Famer. Waddell Wilson, NASCAR Hall of Famer. Buddy Baker, NASCAR Hall of Famer. Darrell Waltrip, NASCAR Hall of Famer. And that doesn't even get into guys like James Hylton, Chad Little, Phil Parsons, Mike Curb, Johnny Hayes, the Jackson Brothers, Dyegard Racing, Will Cronkite, Ultra Motorsports, and so many others. Well, today, Cliff is going to invite us over to talk about his career. Plus, we're going to go visit the old Johnny Hayes U.S. Tobacco shop where they built Benny Parsons cars back in the mid-'80s. Now, Cliff hasn't been back there since 1990, which is the last year he worked for that team. So it's been over 35 years. We're going to check that building out. Plus, he's going to give me a tour of Denver, North Carolina, which is where several teams were based out of. We're going to see a lot of these old racing shops. And then we're also going to check out Cliff's own personal garage, where he has some really cool items from his cousin Bill Champion, who was a NASCAR driver back in the 1970s. And we're going to go see his Ford Bronco that he won for winning the pole with Benny Parsons at Charlotte. He's also going to take me to his current place of business where he works restoring old Ford Broncos. We're going to see some really cool rigs. Cliff is also going to be very open with us about some of the personal struggles he's had in his life and how people like Lake Speed, Bobby Hillin, the guys at Motor Racing Outreach, Phil Parsons, how all those guys helped lead him to God and how that changed his life during some very dark times. He's just an incredible man. And like that list just stated, I mean, he's rubbed shoulders with so many people. We're gonna get a really, really close glimpse at what NASCAR was like back in the 70s and the 80s.
I was born in Norfolk, Virginia. And my dad owned a fence and home improvement company, but I guess he dealt a lot with some of the junkyards, things like that. Ricky Rudd's dad worked at one of the junkyards up there in Virginia, and my dad had dealt with him a couple times. So when I got old enough to get my driver's license, my dad took me. The Rudds lived like 2 blocks away from me, about 2.5 blocks away, in a court around there, and he took me by their house. And Ricky's dad was building a dune buggy for Ricky's brother, Al Rudd Jr. So he took me by, we looked at that thing, and I had gone to work for a guy after school in a Volkswagen place building dune buggies right after that. So my dad ended up giving me the money, and I built a dune buggy. We got out of school for a Christmas vacation, and I had 10 days, and I built a dune buggy and drove it to school when we went back. So that's how Ricky's brother, Al Jr., and I got to know each other. We were like, he's like a brother to me. You know, we were really close back then. And I guess he had his dune buggy, I had mine. We were always going down to North Carolina. At the time, you could drive from Virginia down the coast right into North Carolina and go to a place called Penny's Hill. Everybody did all the dune climbing. But that's how we became friends. And then he and I got into business, rebuilding totals and things like that at his dad's junkyard, using his stuff, of course. But and you know, they raced go-karts and things like that. And I ran a race or two with them, but they were really good. You know, Ricky was he was a national champion, and his brother Al Rudd Jr., he was a national champion. This is the motor that came out of Ricky Rudd's brother, Al Rudd Jr., AJ. It was the motor in his dune buggy, his fiberglass dune buggy that he had. When he passed away, the family gave me his dune buggy because I had one that my dad sold when I started racing. And they just said, we don't know of anybody that would want it more than you, so I've got the motor. I took the motor out of it, and I need to, you know, tear it all down and rebuild it. But this was a pretty good racing motor back then. It had the big bore cylinders on it and big cam. He put the Weber 40 IDA Weber carburetors on it with the dual port heads. I mean, it had everything on it.
So would this come out, would have originally come out of Al Rudd's junkyard?
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Yeah, everything we did, we got everything out of the junkyard. Even when we raced, when we needed springs, we'd go out and get springs out of a car out there, and we knew that you could get a 4-speed top loader transmission out of we had a Mercury Eliminator come through there that had the right transmission in it. So we had a 4-speed transmission, and when you needed a 370 gear, you could go get one out of a pickup truck.
Wow.
Out there and use your gear.
Wow.
And we didn't know you could buy sheets of steel to build a car, and we needed to repair a fender. We'd go out there and try and find something like a Vista Cruiser station wagon, had a great big hood, and we'd grind all the paint off of it and everything and make a fender out of it. Al Jr. came to me and he says, "Hey, let's go to Daytona, watch the race." I'm like, "Man, that's like watching paint dry." I said, I don't mind going. I said, but you know, I said, I can't go sit in the stands for 4 hours. I can't do that. So he said, "Well, why don't you call your cousin Bill, see if he can get us in?" I said, "Yeah, I'll go if I can get the pits or something, the garage, but I ain't going to sit in those stands." We called Bill. He said, "Sure, I'll get you in." And we went down there. We watched him working on the car. And the guy that was adjusting the valves didn't know what he was doing. He had the motor all out of place to adjust the valves. So I told Bill, I said, "Look, I ain't trying to, you know, get in your business or nothing. That guy don't know what he's doing. You're going to go out there and blow the motor up." Bill told me, he says, "Well, if can you do it? You know, adjust the valves?" I said, "Yeah." And he told that guy to get it out of the way. And I went in there and adjusted the valves and stuff. And then something broke on the car and the steering later that day. And Al Jr. and I jumped in there and fixed that. And that night we got back to the motel, and he offered me a job. And I was down there. It was my 21st birthday.
Wow.
It was the July of '74, the Firecracker 400 down there. And so I started then. They give you, when you qualify for the Daytona 500, Regal shocks and Napa and stuff, they give every team a cooler right there. And what they did is they had a painter right there, and he would hand letter your cooler right there and give it to the team. And there's a few around, but I've never seen one that had the rack and everything to go with it. It got the wheels on it. It rolls.
Oh, yeah.
And
what year was that? 74, 75, something like that?
I don't know what year the cooler came from. Like I said, it was in his garage. He quit in '85, I think, was the last year he ran.
Really?
So I'm not sure where the cooler came from, but his daughter, she gave me, right here's a couple of tools that he had in the garage when he quit. And there's some depth mics and stuff right there.
Wow.
And a regular mic right there. But that and a couple of hand tools right there. And then there was a, well, I got it under here, down at the bottom. Under this cooler, this here is the old valve set that I used to use it to grind the valves on the race car right there.
This is your first job in racing, right?
First job in racing. I'm a motor builder right off the bat.
Oh my goodness.
But this thing is pretty cool. It's dirty on the outside, but it's still got everything in it. Here's all the stones.
Wow.
And here's all the guides and stuff to go in there. And you've got the little rubber deals that go, you stick them on the valve and lap your valves in with the compound.
Right.
Seat the valves in. All the little collets there for it. But this is an old set right here. I can promise you that. Oh, that, and there's the motor that ran the thing. You'd put them guides in there, and you'd drop this over top of it, and that's what ground your valve seats. And you'd stick this in the top of it,
Right.
and that's why you'd grind your valves.
Wow. So I have to wonder, when she called you up and she said, you know, she has all this stuff in there, and you went up there and laid your eyes on this, what in the world was your reaction seeing that?
Oh man, you can't believe it. I mean, my wife, what are you gonna do with all this junk? I said, but you don't know the memories that I have with it.
Right.
That's the thing about it.
Right. Wow.
That's different. And there's the toolbox right there that we had. And you can see it says Champion 10 on the front of it right there.
Oh, yeah,
But that's the toolbox he had when I went to work for him in 1974.
Right.
That's the same toolbox, and the handles broke off this end, but that's the one. I mean, that toolbox and this valve set and those tools right there is pretty much what we had to run a race team with.
Wow. So one of the things I meant to ask you when we were inside is, you know, we're looking at this, and I mean, this is, to me, this is old school. For you, it's probably this is what y'all were doing.
Yeah.
You know, you're kind of telling me a bit off camera, like compare this to now. Like, what do you think about like racing today compared to how it was?
Oh my gosh, it's nowhere. It isn't even comparable at all. There's no way that you can reference the two together.
Right.
I still stay in contact and with people in racing and stuff. And I've talked to like John Dorton over at Hendricks, and they were interested in me sometime loading this stuff in the back of the truck and bring it over just to show those guys that back then, all you had was a toolbox and a couple of tools. That's all you had to run a race team back then. You had one guy building the motors and packing the bearings and doing everything. And now, the hundreds of thousands of dollars, not millions of dollars they have just in the motor room. Compared to this stuff here you're looking at, you're looking at $500. Al Jr., he'd come and help me at nighttime on the car sometimes. And then he would come change tires for me.
Wow.
During the pit stops. And then the next year we talked Bill into letting Ricky drive the car, which I think it was more Ricky's dad that talked him into it. He probably offered to buy him a set of tires or something back then. Buy some tires or something to put him in the car. Bill had his old Mercury Cyclone. I guess it was a 71, which was outdated at the time. And we took it over to Langley and let Al Jr. and Ricky drive it. Made a couple laps at Langley over there, and they only made a couple laps, but Ricky was fast, like right off the bat. And Ricky's brother turned out was just as fast as him, but it took him, a couple laps to get there, where Ricky had the natural like that. So they put Ricky in the car, and he drove it a couple races the next year until they had a falling out. Ricky's dad and him had a falling out, and they kind of went by the wayside. And that's when I went to work for James Hylton.
So did you move to South Carolina to go?
Yeah.
Really?
Yep. Yeah, I packed up and moved to South Carolina.
Wow.
Right then. Lived in Inman, and I lived in a little trailer beside the shop. He had like a little travel trailer, and that's where he'd get people to stay. And I lived there that year in that little trailer.
What was James like to work for? Because you were with him for what, one season?
I was there for a season, then I came back another season.
Okay.
But I was there that year. We were a couple races into the season, so I finished up the year with him. But James probably taught me more than anybody, because Bill just kind of, when I went to work for Bill, we were down in Daytona. He busted a block. That's when I first met him, really, down there. And they busted a block during the race. And he offered me the job. I came home, and we get back to the shop, and he walks in and he hands me a piece of paper that's got some settings on it. And he says, "There's a motor room back in the back. I got a new block will come in and be here Wednesday. I have to build a new motor." So I was crew chief, wheel bearing packer, motor builder, everything, all right in the first, here you go. So you kind of get thrown in the deep end. It was really interesting. It was interesting with both of them, because Bill had the old cab over truck that you drove up on the back of. Yeah. And none of us were used to driving an old diesel truck like that, where you grind the gears in and get all that stuff. So a lot of interesting stuff with that. We were coming home from Martinsville. Al Jr., Ricky's brother, his wife actually worked for my dad as a secretary there with his business. And they had come to the race, and they were driving like a little Datsun B210 or something like that. And I was driving the hauler, which had a sleeper on it. Well, we get part of the way back from Martinsville and pull over the side of the road, and he's like, she's got to go to work tomorrow morning. I said, well, okay, well, you drive the truck and let her get in the sleeper, get some sleep, and I'll drive the Datsun. Well, we're out in the middle of nowhere on the side of the road, and it is dark, pitch black, no cars, it's early in the morning. So he takes off, and I jump in that thing, and I floor it, and it goes, oh, and just cuts off. I'm like, man, I done flooded it or something that's hot. I done flooded it like that. So I sit there, hold my foot on the floor, crank on it, it doesn't start. So I sat there and said, well, maybe it needs something. So I pump it, and it still never hits a lick. So, well, if it's flooded, it's really flooded now. So now I sit there and hold my foot on the floor for about 10 minutes, waiting for the gas to go away. It still won't crank. So I get out. I'm kind of feeling around under the hood. It is pitch black out in nowhere. And all of a sudden, a car comes by, and I'm looking down in the motor room, and down on the ground, I can see the rotor button laying on the ground, broken half out of the distributor. I feel around, get in the glove box, and there's one of those little scrunchy hair ties for women. And I find a rubber band. And what had happened was, distributors back then, they had these old spring clips that go on each side of the distributor, hold the distributor cap down. And one of those had come off. And the distributor cap, when I gassed it, the motor jumped up, the cap came up, and the rotor button came around and hung it. It knocked a hole in the side of that distributor cap about the size of a 50-cent piece and broke the rotor button in half.
Wow.
So I take the rubber band and stick around the rotor button to hold it together. And then I take that scrunchie and stick under the vacuum on the side of the distributor and hook it on one of the nipples on the distributor and hold it down and drove that thing home. And I told him, I pulled in the driveway. I said, you can drive that thing to work tomorrow, but I wouldn't go over 50 with that thing. Wow. But James was interesting working for James too. I ended up the second time I came back, Kurt Shelmerding was there, and Kurt and I both lived in that trailer.
Wow.
He had the bed at one end, I had bed at the other end, which we're only talking probably a 20-foot long trailer. But Kurt, I ran into him, and he sent me some pictures when we were coming across country. I guess we must have stopped. It was probably Arizona. And it's got these, for the rest area, it's got these metal teepees. And it was me and James standing in front of one of those teepees out there. And but James, he was a lot of memories with James. He taught me probably more than about anybody in racing, because he was a good teacher. Yeah. He's the one that taught me how to do things right and the maintenance and everything like that. But you work day and night, the independents back then. I mean, you'd work till 11, 12, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, depending on what it took to get to the next racetrack. Yeah, there wasn't any regular. I mean, Kurt and I were sitting there one time, and we got off at 9 o'clock one night. We got done. The car was in good shape, didn't have much to do to it. We're all done. It's 9 o'clock. So we had the night off. So we went and took a shower, and we thought we'd go to town. Well, Spartanburg, back then, it closed up the sidewalks. I mean, we got to Spartanburg probably about 9:45. Wasn't nothing open. It was all closed. So we turned around, came back home. We didn't know what to do with the night off, just working until 9 o'clock. It's a neat area around here because it's so automotively connected.
Right.
From all the race teams, there's so many talented people around here. And a lot of times they do something else.
Yeah.
Like there's a guy, Marv Acton, very talented fabricator that worked with me on the race teams right there. He's got a shop down this road right here.
Okay.
That he still does fabricating down there. And there's a sign, if you saw that sign, that says Simpson Weld Works. That was Bill Simpson that did all the Simpson safety, safety harnesses and fire suits and all that. That was his son's shop. He got out of racing and started building dock equipment, dock ramps, and things like that. I was with James, and then that was in 75. I think in 76, I worked for Ricky and them for a while. I came back home, and then they kind of ran out of money, slowed up, so I went back to work for James down there, and then the next year I went to work for Childress.
Yeah.
And while I was at Childress's, he had a little more money than most of the guys did. He was getting a lot of hand-me-downs from Junior Johnson, things like that. So he had pretty good equipment, and he could run decent, but he was still, trying to run a business. The independents had to run a business. They had to make money and survive like that. So they still couldn't run as hard as they wanted to. But he did, like the rest of them, he did the best he could with what he had. About halfway through the season, they went to Riverside, and Ricky's brother called me and they had gotten cars and stuff, and they were struggling along going through Rookie of the Year when Will Cronkite was there and stuff. So when Richard got back from Riverside, I stayed there trying to get a new car built for him, and I left and came back to help them, go for Rookie of the Year. This building right here on the right, used to belong to Hank Parker Sr., the fisherman right there. Hank Parker, the big time fisherman. But he kept his fishing boats here and ran the Lake Norman magazine out of here.
This little building right here?
And as we pull away, you'll see on the other side of the shop is the garage doors where he kept his bass boats and stuff in there and all his fishing stuff.
Really? Dang. Oh, yeah. Man, he had 4 bays back there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Richard, to me, seeing him now, he's still pretty much the same guy he was back then.
Right.
Yeah, from what I know of him now and, and seeing him some. But Richard, I enjoyed working for Richard, but he was a hard worker, because like I say, he grew up kind of doing it all himself and just kind of grew into it, and he built his business. He's a really good businessman right there. But it was fun. You got to know a lot of people and stuff. He had some interesting characters work for him. We had gone to Talladega, and the race, well, I think it rained out, and everybody came home, and we were in a dually driving back with me and Richard and a couple of us. Richard we were driving back, and some of the other guys had an old Plymouth Fury, and they were riding with us. I mean, they were following us back, and Richard and them had got into a bottle of moonshine that they had in the truck. Richard was driving, and these guys pulled up beside us, and Richard, he kind of weaved over at him a couple of times, and finally he just caved in the guy's fender right there and there. And we pulled over the side of the interstate right there and picked up the molding that knocked off on the ground and put it back in there. And but it was fun and stuff back then. But I really enjoyed it. But like I said, Richard, he was a hard-working guy. He had a lot of volunteer help. His shop was the old shop was on Walltown Street there in Winston-Salem, and you'd have people come by during the day. There was a policeman that used to come by the shop all the time, and he'd be in there. No, I remember we were trying to make a window net, the rod to hold the window net and stuff, and he's over there probably on duty, just guessing, because he still had his gun belt on him, and he's fully uniformed, and he's in there just over the hacksaw over there with the vise, just cutting, making stuff. Wow. So, and those guys would come to the racetrack. That was your help. A lot of the volunteer help.
So this building right here was DK Ulrich's shop.
Yep.
And you were telling me underneath this awning is where they parked the hauler.
That's where they parked the race car haulers. Was right outside. Dang. Right there.
Wow. That is so cool. This shop looks about as big as the shop that you had.
Yeah.
Really?
It probably is. You probably had as much space in there, but DK was running a full schedule too.
Right.
Of course, he didn't have much of a budget then. He was just a little independent right there.
Wow.
DK was pretty resourceful.
Oh, yeah. There is the famous story of, I believe, when Petty didn't qualify for the 600, he drove one of DK's
cars.
Yeah,
sure did.
That is super cool.
And I believe it's a granite shop now, or it was. I think now they build or they sell those golf carts and stuff out of here.
Right.
But it was a granite shop up until recently, and I think they moved the granite shop down the street. DK had that office building next to it was his offices.
This little house looking thing?
The little house upstairs where you see those windows.
Yep.
He had a hot tub right inside those windows.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. He was a ladies' man.
That's great. So you end up going back to Ricky's again. Tell me a bit about, obviously we know what Ricky Rudd would do later on in his career, winning so many seasons. But what was a young Ricky Rudd like?
He was competitive. He's always been high strung his whole life. And that's probably part of how he got the name Rooster, the nickname Rooster right there. He's a good guy, but I mean, he's like most of the riders, just like Earnhardt and everybody else. You get to know him away from the racetrack. They can all be tender-hearted, but they can all, because they're used to having so much demand on their time and everything, they can be, no, sure, I don't have time, just like that. And it turns some fans off. But if you really catch them because they're working. I mean, if you're in the middle of work and somebody comes up to you, it's, hey, I'm busy. I'm doing something. If you want to catch me after work or at lunch, that's fine. But I don't have time right now. So,
yeah. So you end up eventually going to work for 28 car.
yeah,
Was there any stint between Rudd's and the 28 car?
yeah. Ricky and them, they had kind of run out of money, and they were going to quit. And Ricky actually ended up getting a ride with Don Levy, Junior Don Levy, up in Virginia, Northern Virginia, and so I went to work. Grant Adcox called me out of Tennessee, and he had a car that had gotten changed over, downsized in the body and stuff, changed over to an Oldsmobile, and Holman Moody did the work, and he was getting the motor and everything, and wanted me to come down and put the thing together to go to Daytona. And we got there, and we had 4 days to put the motor in it, set it up, and go to Daytona. And I got some of the friends from racing with Ricky and stuff. A boy named Joey Stewart. He was like Ricky's best friend in high school. He came down with me and helped put the car together, get the motor in it and stuff. And we worked for 3 days, just about around the clock right there, and got the car ready, loaded it up, and then drove to Daytona after not having any sleep for a couple of days. And it had a Waddell Wilson motor in it. He used to buy his motors from Waddell, and Waddell gave him good motors. So we got down there at Daytona, and the car would run pretty good, but it wasn't handling very good. And I talked to Banjo Matthews, which is one of the smartest chassis builders that I knew back then, and he told me some things to do to the car. We had to cut the chassis. It was old and fatigued, and we cut it and welded it back together in some of the bars and stuff, and it made all the difference in the world. I mean, we were fast after that, and being an independent. I mean, his dad owned a dealership, but it was me and one other guy working there. It was Will Lind.
Oh yeah,
worked for, which actually ended up working for Childress, and he's been at Childress all these years. But I met Will when I worked for at Grant Adcox. His wife was the manager of the apartments that I moved into while I lived there, and so he came to work for us. But we qualified fourth at Daytona, and they came over and they started taking that car apart with a fine-tooth comb, going through it, because they figured we must have had nitrous oxide. We must have had something. We didn't have anything. We just had a Waddell Wilson motors. What we had, we had horsepower. And looking at the car, because we hadn't had time to work on it, it just had an old piece of junk cowl on it up there, some little aluminum stuck up there. And I said something to Waddell. He came over looking at the car, and I said, "Yeah." He said, "Don't touch nothing, man. Don't touch nothing." He said, "You'll probably slow it down. Just leave it alone." So we did, and we started the race, and the car actually ran good. I think we were running sixth at the time, and it burned out a wheel bearing, real wheel bearing.
Was this a 79 Daytona 500?
That was in 79.
The infamous one.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Burned out the wheel bearing right there. And so we came home, and we ran a couple of races, and we built a pretty cheated up car, and went to Talladega, and we couldn't get through inspection right there. So we ran the ARCA race with it. But
what was cheated up about it? Statute of limitations is up.
Oh, no, it was the body. We had narrowed it up. I mean, it was narrowed here and there and stuff like that, which I'd done it again since then. And, you're smarter, and you learn how to get through. You learn where the templates go and what happens, and you make it fit where the templates are within tolerance, and, you work around it. Up here, we're getting ready to come up on in just a minute is the Skull Bandit shop with Harry Gant and Travis Carter. The late Travis Carter. Matter of fact, Travis passed away not too long ago. He was a very soft-spoken guy. But
so it was the skull car that sat up there, right?
Yeah, they had the and there's some pictures around, and they'll show the old Harry Gant Skull Bandit car set up on that pole right there. They're the first ones And I don't know where they came up with the idea at, you know, but Hal Needham was part of the deal. The stuntman from Smokey and the Bandit, the movies and everything, and Burt Reynolds, they were all parts of it. So they might have come up with the promotion, whoever did it. But they had they put a car up on top of that pole, sat there for years.
Wow. Was this all just grass, or was there a driveway here?
This was all just grass. The driveway went down the other side and goes around back, but this was all just grass over here.
Wow. I mean, has this just sat abandoned for a while, or was there anything in here after they closed? Or?
Yeah, Ray DeWitt had it. He bought it and ran a cup car out of here with Ted Musgrave, and then he ended up cutting back on the cup, and we ran, I was his crew chief over here with Tim Fedewa in the Bush car, the 55 car. We ran that out of here. And Ray passed away, and his son got the building and stuff, but it's kind of fallen into neglect and stuff. And I don't know, he was leasing it out at one time, so I don't really know what's going on with it now.
Wow. Was this big chain link barbed wire always here?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's been here since the beginning. Yeah, now they ended up turning this into the motor room, but that's the shop up there.
Right.
And they had the dining room on the back of it.
Yeah.
And then they ended up expanding and making the motor room all back here.
Wow.
And stuff, and kept the dyno up there. It was fun working for Grant. I mean, he was a really nice guy, and his dad both. I mean, I hated to hear about him. He passed away at Atlanta, but super nice guy. I really enjoyed working for him because you didn't run all the races. They didn't have a full budget like that. So you might run a race that might be a month before you run another one. And we'd get off at night. He had some friends that had a country band. At night, we'd go down to the local pub and listen to the band play and drink beer. You know? So it was totally different working for Grant. And at the end of the year, when they decided to cut back, because we had built a new car and spent a bunch of money, his dad said, we got to cut back. So he called Waddell, which we didn't get the motors from, and Waddell hired me to come to work over there.
You go from an independent to a team that basically is on top of their game.
Yes.
Tell me about this.
Yes, there were so many people there that were, I mean, just top caliber.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't even know it at the time. You know, like I said, I was young and dumb, which now I'm just old and dumb, but then I was young and dumb, and I didn't really know enough to appreciate the people I was working with. Buddy Baker was the driver. Harry Renier owned the team. Dan Ford was building the gears. There was just so many good fabricators in there, and machinist Luter worked in the motor room. I can't name all the good people. I can't even think of them all that worked in there. It was great working there. I learned a lot working there, but I was only there like 6 months. You know, we won Daytona, then we came back and won Talladega in the famous race where he chased them all down and stuff, and learned a lot being there. And then at the middle of the season, of course, working for James and Childress, you were making $125 a week before taxes. So he was bringing home about $85 a week. You know, of course, you could live on that back then, but barely. And but that's what the job paid. You know, and that's all they had money for, the budget back then. So when I went to work for Waddell, he gave me $15,000 a year. Wow. And like I said, it was big time. Went to Victory Circle, did all those things. Halfway through the year, Diagard called me. And Darrell Waltrip was driving for him over there. And they wanted me to come over there. And I was a pretty good tire changer right off the bat. I mean, now when we won Daytona, I mean, when I was changing tires right off the bat. And we always had good pit stops. So when I went to Diagard, I started changing tires there.
Now, before we get into Diagard, I don't want to gloss over the Daytona 500 because that's a pretty monumentous race because it's the fastest Daytona 500 history. Grey Ghost.
Yes.
Could you just talk to me about your personal experience through your eyes of what that race was like? Because I don't think people realize how dominant that car was at Daytona at that time.
No, you're right about that. I mean, it was very dominant. You know, the next time they brought the car back, they made them paint a little day glow orange or reddish on the nose of the car, so it was because the gray blended in with the asphalt, and it was so fast that the drivers were complaining it was coming up behind them so fast they couldn't see it. They didn't see it coming, you know, because people probably don't realize that when you're on the racetrack, you're not, you can't be looking in the rearview mirror all the time. You're focused. And when you come off the corner, you'll glance up the mirror. And then when you get down in the next corner, you glance at the mirror because you don't want to, you're getting ready to change your line. But when you're down the straightaway, you hold your line. So you don't really need to know where the cars are. But when you get to the end, you're going to chop off the corner or something. You need to know for somebody come up behind you. And they couldn't see it. He just zoomed right up behind him and he wasn't there. Now all of a sudden he is. So, like I said, it was something to me because we always worked on the car so hard because we never, unless you're the fastest guy there, you're always working on the car trying to pick up speed. All we did was, I think Waddell changed the spark plugs. He did most of his own work on the motor right there. So we pretty much just waxed the car. That's about all we did all week long was you'd sit there. I mean, they did their homework and stuff. They had that good aerodynamic body. Waddell had the horsepower, and we would just sit there and wax the car.
Do you remember the pit stops? I know you were the front tire changer.
Yeah, I was a front tire changer. The funniest part about it that I remember, I mean, it was good doing the pit stops because we were, like I said, we were always fast, so we didn't lose any spots. But when you're leading the race, you don't gain any spots. When you're first, you only can go down from there. All the pit stops went good. We just took gas there at the end and took off. So I remember seeing all the pictures and stuff from us standing out there pushing the car right there on pit road. But one of my biggest memories from it was I got back home and Al Jr. called me and he says, "Hey, yeah, I saw, man, y'all won the race. That's great." And everything. He says, "Yeah." He said, "I seen you down there changing tires." I said, "Well, how'd you know it was me?" He said, "I seen that bald spot on the top of your head." And I go, "What bald spot?" Back then I had hair and CBS was filming the race and they were right over top of us. So it was right over top of my head right there when we did the pit stops. And you could see that thin hair. You could see a little spot. And before that day, never knew I was going bald. We all laughed about that for years. Up there at the corner, there's an old gas station up there.
Yeah.
It used to be a bait shop. It was called Rob and Don's Bait Shop.
Uh-huh.
And a buddy of mine, Mathis, he was a fishing guide on the lake.
Yeah.
And he would tell us all the time that Aerosmith, whenever they played around town, they would call him up and he would take them out on his boat fishing. And he would take Steven Tyler, he would take him into Rob and Don's and he said, "You're walking to an old North Carolina country bait shop." And he's in there with the black fingernails and all the stuff. And they're walking around all them hair and all that stuff. And the way they dressed, they really stood out. They were out of place in there.
What do you think was so different about a Waddell's engines compared to the rest of the field? Because, again, I don't think that gets talked about enough.
It doesn't. Waddell was a really good perfectionist. When it came to his motors, I mean, he was a perfectionist. People don't realize, I think, what it takes to be a good engine builder. You might not realize that's physics, but it is. When you got to realize all the dynamics of an engine and understand what it takes to make horsepower on a big track versus a little track. And we always said that Waddell Wilson had the best super speedway motors, but Robert Yates had the best short track to intermediate track. I mean, in short, Charlotte, those places, Waddell's motors were good at Daytona and Talladega, and he was kind of even with everybody when you got to Charlotte's and Michigan's, places like that. Like I said, the way they view motors, flow with the heads, there's so much to the size of the chambers, the runners in the intake, the size of the valves, just everything about it. That's a big difference between short track and speedway. And it's just the approach that engine builders take to get to that point. Makes a big difference. So it's a big difference between those two guys for me. Casey Kane bought that.
This one?
Yep. He had that, and I believe he sold it. He built it as an investment.
Yeah.
And it was sat empty for years and years and years. And then I think he sold it. But it's probably one of those deals that's a tax write-off or something. He probably about gave it to the church.
Right.
You can get away with that with the church, but
Yeah, that's what it is now, is a church, but it looks like a strip mall of some sort.
Yeah. Yep.
So let's jump back to when Dygard calls you.
Yeah. They called me up and they wanted me to come over there and they wanted to be like the right-hand man, Buddy's right-hand man. Buddy Parrott was crew chief over there then. Darrell Waltrip was driving, which, you know, everybody knows Darrell Waltrip was a great driver and stuff, just like Buddy Baker, you know, big name driver. I'm sitting there making $15,000 a year working for Waddell Wilson, Harry Renier, and they call up and offer me $18,000 to come over there, which $18,000 still isn't a lot of money, but that's a $3,000 raise. When you're making $15,000, that's a pretty good percentage raise right there. And I went to Waddell and told him, I said, you know, I got an offer over there. And what really made me think about it was when you're working for Waddell, Waddell's always going to be the crew chief and he's always going to be in charge. So there's nowhere to go up. You're not going to get any bigger or any better than where you are. And at Dygard, the opportunities over there, you could be whatever.
Yeah.
And so I went over there and Riverside was our first race right there. Well, they actually hired me at halfway through the season in June. And I left and went by the shop. They gave me some clothes, some Gatorade clothes, and I went on an airplane and met them in College Station, Texas. And we were leading that race, and a valve car started leaking oil. So we fell out of the race. Then we went to Riverside, we all flew straight to Riverside. They met us in Texas. What you used to do then was you didn't have room for backup cars. You just had a box truck with a trailer behind it to carry the car. So you couldn't carry a second car. So what we did was we had a crew come with another pickup truck and trailer and bring us the Riverside car, and we switched them out in Texas. And then we went on to Riverside and won Riverside. So that was actually, I mean, I'm in high cotton then. I'm sitting there and you done won Daytona and Talladega over here, and now you're over there winning Riverside, you know, and it just felt like you were on the way then, you know, just all these famous people and all this stuff. You can see the difference between the independents and these guys.
Yeah. So at that time, you know, you joined Dygard, this was 1980.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't shortly after that when Darrell and Bill Gardner had this contract issue.
Yeah.
And so I'm imagining you were right in that environment when that was going down.
Well, I mean, I was there, and Buddy was the crew chief. They weren't sure, I guess. There had been some rumors that maybe Buddy was leaving or something, or they were going to let Buddy go or something like that. And we're in the shop, and we knew that Darrell wasn't happy with his contract with Dygard. And we're in the shop one day, and it was me and Dan Ford under the hood putting the motor in, and Buddy Parrott comes walking through the shop, and he stops and looks at us and says, "I hope you like your new effing crew chief," and walked right by us and walked back in the motor room. And next thing I know, Noah Brown comes running in the motor room. "Somebody come in here and help me get these two apart." And Buddy comes walking out and walks out the shop, and Robert comes out, his shirt's all tore, his face is all red and everything, and Buddy just walked back there and nailed him because Robert was part owner of the team. He owned the motor room part of it. So, and Buddy had heard the rumors that they were going to let him go and hire Jake Elder. Yeah. And he asked him about it the night before. They had the banquet. They had a big banquet or something, and he asked him about it. No way. You're our man. And the next morning, they met him in the parking lot, told him he was fired. So, understandably, he was a little upset. So, that was interesting to see him actually throw hands. Tanner Gray.
Oh, yeah.
And Gray guys that do the drag racing, that's where they ran out of.
Really?
Yeah. And he stopped doing the drag racing, and it's great technologies, but they had this shop, and then they got one right down the hill right here. So you got that. This is all just rich guys that keep their toys in here, all hot rods and stuff like that. And then this shop here is owned by Jim France. This is the action racing team that Gary Nelson is actually the guy on, but that's their race rigs right there. They do all the road racing. They just got back from Le Mans or somewhere not too long ago, I think, with those things.
So if you remember the Mike Hill video, this is where Mike worked at the end of his career. If you remember the story that he told us about locking up his toolbox or packing up his toolbox and leaving, it was out of this building right here. That is so cool.
Yeah, Mike and I used to wave at each other because I work right across the street where our shop is.
Really?
That's where I work now. Jake was really talented. Yeah, I enjoyed working with Jake, but he's probably a little like me. You know, got their weird nuances about him and stuff. Jake was very smart on race cars. Jake's probably only drawback was he couldn't read or write. When you'd set a car up, it was like 3 inches and 2 big marks and a little one. You know, and you'd go to the Waffle House to eat, and you'd look at the menu, and he'd look at it and put it down, and he'd come up and, you know, and if it had pictures on it, he'd go, yeah, give me that. Or he would, well, yeah, just give me, I'll have what he's having. Wow. You know, but he was so smart on race cars that, I mean, he led Dale Earnhardt to a championship. You know, he led a lot of people to win a lot of races. I mean, I don't think Jake ever got the credit that he deserved. He was very, very smart. Jake's downfall was when they downsized the cars, and everything he knew all over the years went out the window, and he was having to learn it all again right there. And it was a slow process.
So talk to me about that. That's a great point, because, you know, after the 80 season, they do go to the shorter wheelbase cars.
Yeah.
Tell me about that and what that was like, and what it was like adjusting to, basically, I have to imagine it's a radical difference.
It wasn't real radical. It took different geometries and different things. You know, it's anytime you change something, it's a different formula. You know, I mean, you can't just go by your old setup sheets. You know, springs are different. Everything's different. The geometries in the front end, the cars drove different and stuff. So you couldn't go by your old notes. You couldn't go by the old things. You had to come up with stuff on your own. And like I said, it took some adjusting too. Some people went to it just like that, and then some people it was a little slow getting there. He was good, but he was having a hard time struggling with that. But in Jake's defense, he was also working with a young driver with Ricky that wasn't experienced, and Ricky hadn't really worked for a big team. He worked for Junior Donlevy, but they were a low budget team. They couldn't experiment and try things and stuff. Just changing to the smaller car, because our first race with Ricky, he came on at the beginning of the year, and we went to Riverside with the old car, the old Monte Carlo. He led the race. He was going to win that race, and the motor blew up. You know, and then we went to the smaller cars the very next race, and we just didn't run that good after that.
What was it like being reunited with Ricky yet again?
It was good. I mean, it's always good to be working with somebody that you know. Ricky and I were never like real close friends or anything. We worked together and did stuff, but even when we were working on his own car with the family, his brother and I were really tight and worked on everything, but Ricky wasn't real mechanically minded back then. So he didn't help you a whole lot on the car. You know, he would, I'll tell a story about when his girlfriend, which ended up being his wife, Linda, she had an old Datsun B210, and Ricky drove it out to the junkyard, his dad's junkyard, one day to tune it up for her. He's going to change oil and tune it up. Now, they live like 12 miles from the junkyard out there. He spark plugs, points, that kind of stuff, and burned a hole in the piston driving home within 12 miles because probably the timing was off and stuff. And I'm thinking, how far is the timing got to be off on the motor to blow it up in 12 miles? I mean, you know, usually they'll go, you can be a little ways off. So Ricky's always told that it's a good thing he made it as a driver, because he didn't have any other talents. But since then, he has become knowledgeable mechanically, and he had to survive in racing. You know, once you get to the top thing, you can't just be a driver right there. You have to know the mechanics about the car. Right. Up until about 2 months ago, this is where they ran all the Toyota show cars out of.
Oh, really?
This was loaded with tractor trailers and stuff. They went to all the races on the east side of the United States and did all the show cars out of that building right there.
Wow.
From funny cars to road race cars to drag cars, they had funny cars, they had everything, and they'd be leaving out of here every week doing show car stuff.
Man.
And then there's a guy well known around here and in the race industry, Max Crawford.
Okay.
He was in the composite business.
Yep.
He came from over in overseas, over there, United Kingdom or something like that, I think. And you still see the Crawford composites, but he has sold it since then. But they do a lot of the bodies and a lot of the composite for most of the race teams and stuff. Somebody's bought him out now, but he started out with a little pole barn over back up where we just came from, over by the Skull Bandit shop on one of the side roads. And I'd met him and went over to his shop, and all it was just a little steel building built on wooden poles, what they called an original pole. It was dirt floor inside, and him and his wife works just as hard, if not harder, than he does.
Right.
And they had all their vacuum chambers in there, and that's where they did all that composite stuff, was right there in that shop. And there was a camper like you slide in and out of the back, not a shell, but one of those slide-in campers. It was sitting on the ground up on the jack stands right there, and had a little hibachi sitting on the floor. And him, his wife, and his 2 daughters lived in that camper while he built that shop, and he's turned it into all this.
That is, he owned this building too?
All of it, yeah.
Yeah,
It was
so
all the
he has a
compound
bunch of
right
buildings actually back there. Wow. That's the American dream right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now he ended up, I mean, he's famous now. Everybody in the industry knows him. But there's a little hot rod shop, and then a lot of these down here were Bush teams and stuff. This place here, they do the mass airflow stuff, the dyno engines, but they do a lot of the turbo stuff and tuning cars and all right there. But this was race shops, and our here Bush teams all right here, and they had some across the street too.
Wow.
They ran one of the truck teams out of here, and they ended up having both shops right there.
Didn't Elysia, aren't they something sports car related, like sports car chassis?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. But I know that one Bush team, they had both of these buildings right here racing out of, and they actually ended up having that building across the street. They expanded into that.
Right.
And and then they got out and left. Yeah, you can't really read the sign right there where they had their racing name on it, but the decal is gone, so I don't really know. Can't really read the thing. What it was.
Man. Oh, I think that's On Point Motorsports, which that was a truck team.
Yeah, it was a truck team. The last, it was Bush teams down here, and then they changed over to truck teams.
That's definitely the On Point Motorsports logo that's there. So how long were you at Dyguard?
I was there probably about a year. I came in June, and then the next year, they let Jake go. They came to me and told me they were going to let Jake go, wanted me to be the crew chief over there with Ricky, because Ricky and Jake didn't see eye to eye on some things and stuff. They, I guess Jake didn't trust him because he was a young driver and stuff, so Jake wouldn't listen to him. And being with the downsize on the cars, there was so much he couldn't, I guess Jake couldn't understand. He thought it was Ricky and didn't think it was the car, so he wasn't working with the car that much. In my opinion, that's what it seemed to be. But even though Jake was a really smart guy, I think it was just the issue. If he'd had experience, if Darryl was still there, they'd have probably done good. But with being an inexperienced driver, he didn't trust Ricky's input enough, I think, to the feel for the ar. I left. What happened was I worked there, and when they turned me into the crew chief, we ran pretty good. We had some good runs. We set on the pole at Martinsville, and we set on the pole at Nashville, and probably should have won the race at Nashville. I mean, we had everybody covered, and I think NASCAR got to where we were stinking up the show. Like maybe the last pit stop or the one before that, we came in leading the race and just, kind of running away with it. And we go back out and we can't even keep up. And I'm like, what? What happened? And we're sitting there and all we could do is run fourth. We can't lead. I mean, we're running fourth, and that's all we can do. And at the end of the race, I went down to Victory Circle, and Benny Parsons won in the MC Anderson car with David Iff as a crew chief. And I looked down, and they got left side tires on the right side. So I go down to the second place car, which might have been Bobby Allison at the time. And I looked down, and they got left side tires on the right side. And whoever the third place car, whatever it was down there, I looked at all three cars that finished ahead of us, and they all had left side tires on the right. Wow. So I went to NASCAR and said, hey, all these guys that got left side tires on the right side. And they looked at me and said, Cliff, you were about your car and we're worried about them. That was the end of it right there. That should have been a big win for Ricky right there. Unfortunately, then they brought Gary Nelson over as like a team manager. And there were some things that went on with Gary. Gary was a good cheater, always has been. We did a few little things while I was there. And it was Gary, it wasn't me. Gary's the one that came up with it. He, over top of the shocks, back in the back, you had a little package tray back under the rear window back there that was a boxed in area. And he had somebody make a fuel bladder that went up there, held about 5 gallons, I think. Wow. And we ran lines down, hid lines through the car and stuff, and had a pump down in the side. And when you wanted to, that pump was stronger than the one in the motor, so you could overcome and pump gas out of that tank right there. So you could extend your pit stops. You know, you could maybe catch a caution that way. You know, everybody else would pit and you'd stay out there, and that a caution would come and you'd get ahead of everybody. But we wrecked the car at Daytona. He hit the wall and ripped the side off the car, so we had to run down there and cover everything up real quick right there. But I had some trouble with Gary, and Gary's a smart guy, don't get me wrong. We had gone to Riverside when we were out there. We had just changed over to the rear end pumps. We had changed from, they used to use these, what they called little water puppy. It had a rubber impeller and a little electric motor, the rubber impeller. And you used to burn those things up. You'd fall out of the race because the rubber would deteriorate or burn up or whatever, and you'd fall out. So people had just started running. They just came out there. Mitsubishi made a little little oil pump, and we put one of those in the car. And we only had that one, and we put it in there, and it burned up in practice. We burned up a gear and got some metal in it and ruined the pump. So I went all through the garage area, none of the parts trucks, nobody had one. I finally found one, Travis Carter. He had his backup car. They had him in their car. And he had one in the race car and one in the backup car. So he got his guys to climb up in the top of the truck and take his spare out of the backup car. Wow. I mean, that's the kind of guy Travis is. Travis was a really nice guy. And so we went on, and like I said, we were leading the race until it blew the motor. But we got back home, and I told one of the guys to pull the pump out of that car, and so I was going to take it back to Travis. And Gary came over there, and the guy was taking the lines out. Next thing I know, I saw him put it back together and got out of the car. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Gary told me not to take it out." I said, "We got to give it back to him." He said, "No, he told me to take the old one that we burned up and wash up the parts washer and give that one back to him." Like, how you can do that to somebody, you know, that did you the favor right there to do that? So I wasn't real happy with that. I've never been that kind of person. And then later in the season, they had 2 different offset wheels back then, and everybody was running either one or the other and trying to decide which one they wanted. And so we had some of both, and we decided which one we wanted. And Buddy Arrington, one of the independents, he had some brand new wheels of the size that we wanted, and we had some of them he wanted. So we traded out wheels, and we got to, we were going to take his wheels to, I believe it was Bristol. Yeah, we were going to take them to Bristol to him. And I had them all loaded up the top of the truck. And next thing I saw, I mean, we're waiting to load the car, and I see the truck driver, and he's over there taking the wheels out, pulling them down out of the back of the truck. And I'm like, "Dick," I said, what's with the wheels? And he said, "Gary told me to take them down." And he'd go out back behind the shop. They had like a pile of all the wrecked stuff, and they had a guy back there, and he was taking all these wrecked wheels that had been up, and he's got a torch and a sledgehammer back there, and he's heating them with a torch and straightening the lips on them where they're all bent up, and put those. And we get to the racetrack, and Buddy Arrington come over to me. He says, "Cliff, what are you trying to pull here? These wheels are all beat up and everything like that." I said, "I got nothing to do with it. I'm sorry. I apologize." That's all I could do. So we got home, and the next race was like Nashville or something like that. And we got the car all ready to go, and walked in to wash our hands and said, "Okay, everybody meet back here in an hour and we'll leave." And I said, "I'm not going." And Gary said, "What?" I said, I'm not going. I'll see you guys. And I quit. I couldn't work for somebody that treated people like that. We had a truck driver at work, and he'd been working there about a month, and he got the truck all ready to go, cleaned up, washed. It was backed up, ready to load. Had the ramps down, and they were just waiting on us. We have break time at 10 o'clock in the morning, and they call him in the office. He comes out. I said, Dick, I said, what's wrong? I said, you look like you seen a ghost. He said, they told me they didn't need me no more. I said, so this is your last race? He said, no, they told me to get my toolbox and leave. I mean, the truck's all ready to go. He's expecting to get in it and drive away. He said, this is like the second of the month. He said, I just paid my month's rent. He said, I got nowhere to go. He said, I got to go back home. So that's when everything all piled in together and everything. And I couldn't work for people like that and stuff. So I left. This is the Bronco 2 that I won at Charlotte Motor Speedway. They gave one to the driver, was Benny Parsons, and they gave one to me as being the crew chief at the Charlotte Motor Speedway 1984 pole setter. Ford Motor Company sponsored the pole and gave us to us, which mine, I had an ex-wife that blew the motor up in it, burned it up and stuff, and pretty much ragged the truck out. So in 2008, when I had my boat burned up and everything, NASCAR called me and said they had a TV show called NASCAR Angels. And it's exit 3, I believe it's 314, if they're interested in looking up, if it's still around. But they came and took the truck and rebuilt the whole thing, put a new motor in it, rebuilt transmission, new wheels and tires, new interior. They did everything to it. And it's pretty much sat inside until about 4 years ago, and it's been outside pretty much since then.
So when you originally had it before we restored it, it was just a stock truck.
It was
didn't
a
have the
stock
lift or
Bronco
anything.
2.
Wow.
That I got it. I lifted it up and put big wheels and tires on it.
Yeah. Man.
Of course, it was sponsored by Goodyear, part of the deal, so it's got Goodyears on it now, where I had a set of Mickey Thompsons on it.
That is super cool. I mean,
it needs a little attention now. The paint is starting to peel off. The clear is starting to peel off, but it needs some attention right now. I just finished rebuilding the motor in it, and it's sitting in it, but I need to finish hooking it all up and get it going.
still though, I mean,
I bought new mirrors for it where they're rusting up, stuff like that, but it's a fun little truck to drive. It's got that put a 302 in it with that big transmission and all. So.
I wonder where the other one went. where
Benny didn't need it. He didn't want to pay the gift tax on it. So
Really?
he gave it to Johnny Hayes, which owned the team, and Johnny gave it to his daughter to drive.
Oh, wow.
Now, where it's gone from there, I don't know.
Wow.
But they painted it. I got it repainted one time. It was all white last I saw it.
Was it pretty common for them to give away cars for awards like this? Wow.
If they did, it was something the track did or something. And this was time Ford was sponsoring the pole for some reason, which I'm glad they did. And I got that, but like I said, it's always been like a trophy to me. Bobby Harrington had called me from over at J.D. Stacy's, but I was okay where I was. I mean, I was with Ricky, you know, everything was going okay and stuff, but all this other stuff was piling up, and I kept telling Robert, no, I don't want to change jobs. I don't want to just keep jumping around and stuff like that. And when all that happened, I just, okay, I'm gone. And I just called Robert the next day and say, I'll come over there.
So you went up and took that job?
I took that job, which is typical in business. You know, he was offering me good money, you know, to come over there.
Yeah.
And then I quit and went over there. It's only like a couple of days later.
Right.
And when I got over there, he said, well, I'll give you this. I said, well, you said you give me this. He said, yeah, but you had a job then. I was trying to hire you away. He said, you don't have a job now, so this is all I'm going to give you. So that was a learning experience for me right there, too. But I learned a lot there. I mean, Dale Inman was the crew chief. And
who was driving the car at that point?
I'm not sure. I can't remember who was driving when we first got there. They had several drivers they went through. Right. You know, Earnhardt had left by the time I got there before in there. But, you know, we had Jim Sauter. He drove the car. Joe Ruttman drove the car. We had, and then we ran some second cars with Robin McCall. She drove a race or two for us right there and stuff. But it was really a learning experience working for, it was an honor to work for Dale Inman. Yeah, he's one of the best out there. Right. So it'd be hard not to learn from him.
Right. So how long were you at Stacy's?
Through the end of that year. At the end of the year, you could see that money was tightening up with Stacy right there. People have the old horror stories about not paying bills and things like that. I never had any problem with Jim Stacy. My checks were always good, and from what I understand, everybody else on the team's checks were always good. But I think, Dale Inman, when you're the crew chief, you are privy to more information than what the guys in the shop are. And he probably saw that he wanted to do things and we don't have the budget to do that. He's probably saw the money belt tightening up and he announced he was leaving at the end of the season. This was a couple of races before the end of the season. So Mr. Stacy, he called me and they were going to make me the crew chief the next year. And we went and ran Riverside, which we had Tim Richmond toward the end right there. Of course, we won both Riversides with Tim right there. And that was pretty much a given when you went there with him. Unless you had mechanical trouble, you were going to win the race when you had Tim Richmond in the car at Riverside. But when we heard that, things were ending and they were going to make me the crew chief, which was great. But I'd heard the stories about how the money was going out and stuff like that. And we were at Atlanta pretty much end of the year, and Johnny Hayes, which ran the Copenhagen Skoal team, they were building that at the time, and he walked by me in the garage area at Atlanta. He said, "Hey, Cliff," said, "we hired your girlfriend." And I go, "What?" He said, "Your girlfriend's come to work for us. We just hired her." I'm like, "Who's that?" Because I didn't have a girlfriend, He said, "Yeah, Terry Brooks." Or I can't remember. Her name wasn't Brooks at the time. It was Terry. And I said, "Well, that's not my girlfriend. That's Gary Brooks's girlfriend that works on the team right there." He said, "Oh, yeah, we just hired her." I said, "Well, you ain't got no other jobs over there, do you?" Because I knew the job was going to end over there at Stacy's right there. And he said, "Well, come see me. Come see me when we get back." So I went over there and he hired me to run they just had a little office building there in Denver. And they hired me I was going to be the crew chief and run that team. But you had to build the team. They had a piece of land and a frame going up in a steel building. That's all they had. They had nothing. But see, the lot used to come down here. Okay. We just had this part here.
Right. Was this gray building, was this the body shop you were talking about?
Well, the end of this was the body shop. Okay. We only had about to where those windows quit.
Right.
And then there was a body shop for the race cars.
Okay.
And then later on, they built another shop because they had more cars back there.
So this was the shop that was
This is
built.
the old Copenhagen Skoal shop with Benny Parsons and Phil. We ran Benny and Phil out of here, which Larry Pollard ended up coming over and being the crew chief for Phil Parsons.
Okay.
Right there.
Wow.
But that was the offices all in U.S. Tobacco had their offices here. They ran their show car guys had their office in here. The secretaries, all that stuff ran out of here.
Wow.
Benny Parsons was the driver. They already had Benny, and they had run a couple of races. Leo Jackson, which was really running the team. He was the motor builder, one of the smartest guys I've ever been around. And he owned a shop. He and his brother owned machine shops up in Asheville. And they had run a couple of races with Benny, and that's when they decided they wanted to go ahead and start their own team with Johnny Hayes and stuff. So it was funny building a team. I'd never had to build a team before other than like Rudd's. You didn't have anything to start with. But we had to get ready for Daytona. So we brought in the old car, and they got a building, and they aren't even finished putting the roof on yet. They're out there with the forklifts putting sheet metal on this place. And I ran to the hardware store and bought some extension cords and stuff. And we ran it through a hole in the wall and off of the saw box they had for building the building out in the parking lot. It was funny. Johnny came to me and gave me a check. And I went down to Sears down in Charlotte, down at Eastland Mall down there. And I loaded up. I mean, I bought tools, drills, everything I could get my hands on, drill presses. I mean, I bought thousands of dollars worth of stuff, and all I had was a check that said Johnny Hayes Racing on it right there. And I mean, I had a truckload in there, and the salesman, he calls the manager over, and the manager says, "Yeah, I don't know, that's a pretty big check, for thousands of dollars right there." What's all this for? I said, "Well, it's for a race team right there. And I showed him the check and said, Johnny Hayes Racing. He said, Johnny Hayes Racing. He said, I'm not familiar. I said, well, it's a new team right there. He said, who's your driver? I said, Benny Parsons. He said, make it good. Let him go. So we left out of there and got the car ready for practice, and then just started, buying cars and building cars and doing everything. But that's how that team got started.
You were building cars in here where they were building the shop around
Yeah.
you.
Oh, yeah. They were still putting up, and we had them. They came out and delivered a compressor, and we set it on the gravel and ran an extension cord over to it and bought a couple hoses, just ran some hoses in the hole in the wall.
Wow.
Because we had to get ready for Daytona.
Where was the haulers parked? Was it?
Back in the back, but they didn't
Back here?
have, on the other side,
Yeah.
this building only goes a little ways
Right.
here. The front of the building goes all the way across the lot.
Right.
But the back, this was the body shop, so it's not very deep. So we had all that empty parking lot out there to run around. And then later on, they turned it into, after Johnny Hayes closed down, they sold the team to Leo Jackson. He took it to Asheville.
Okay.
And Andy moved up there, and then later on, Andy ended up buying the team from Leo.
Right.
And stuff, and ran it out of there.
Was
they
there
turned
any-
it into a body shop.
Was there any other racing things that went in here, do you know, beyond that?
No,
Really?
no, it never was a race shop again after that.
Wow. So I want to ask you about Benny because, a lot of people know Benny from TV
Yeah.
and being this gregarious, very jovial guy.
Yeah.
You probably were around him quite a bit
Yeah.
during that time. What really was Benny like? Was he that same type of guy as he was on TV? Or?
Sometimes. I don't know that Benny ever really liked me or cared for me a lot. There always seemed to be something there, but we had a falling out one time, and over something. So Benny he could be a good guy, but he had that side to him where, he had the reputation as Mr. Nice Guy, and he could be that way, but he could also, he would call up the shop sometimes, and you'd go up there, and we had Terry Brooks, Gary Brooks's wife. Her mother worked there as a secretary at the shop for Johnny Hayes, and we'd go up there and she'd be crying. Benny'd call up and he'd just have her crying right there, just fussing her out and stuff like that, which I said I caught the brunt of that a time or two. But to the public, he was Mr. Nice Guy. And he usually was, but everybody's got their times, I guess, when they can be that way.
Right. Well, transitioning back into, the actual driving portion of the team, y'all are pretty successful. Ended up picking a win up I believe, at Atlanta in '84.
Yeah, we went and we won the invitational race, or the open right there. And then we came back and won the race a week later, I think it was. We came back and won the actual Atlanta race, that was our first win for the team. That was something special right there, because it was the first time I'd really been the crew chief at a team and won a race. That was good. And Johnny, I guess U.S. Tobacco was the sponsor and had a lot to do with the team. So Johnny called him up and said, hey, the winnings right there and everything, we don't really care about the winnings and stuff. What if I buy the guys something with the prize money right there? Because the budget was enough to run the team. They didn't need the prize money right there. It was special to everybody. So Johnny went and got us all black-face Rolexes. It didn't have the diamonds on it, but it had everything but the diamonds. And so he had to come up with like 5 or 6 of those things. That was special. It wasn't that it was the watch, it was what it meant. That was the whole thing about it. This was the main race shop right here. I said that that last window right there was where my office was.
Oh, right here?
And down the hallway, and then you'd come right out into the race shop.
Really?
Right here. Which, this ain't very big. Compared nowadays to race teams,
Right.
they're on big complexes.
So
But this was pretty good at the time.
how many race cars would you have in here at a time in here?
We usually have about 4.
Okay.
Like that, we had the bays, and I'll tell the guys now, you can see they still got the cables hanging down.
Oh, yeah.
You'd have a race car, and we ran a cable down. We had a pull cord for the air hoses,
Right.
and then we had a cable hanging down for our wire welder, so you could work on each race car, and you wouldn't have to pull the cords all around the shop. You could just go from side to side and just plug a welder in.
Wow.
Right there.
Is this the first time you've been back since you worked here?
Yeah. First time I've been in the building since then. But we had all the race stuff, and in the corner over there, the U.S. Tobacco bought us some exercise equipment, and we had a little place we would stay fit over there, and then had our machine shop next to that, and the rest of it was all just race cars down through here.
Why do you think that Skoll decided to sponsor y'all's team when they were already sponsoring another team? Was it just they were wanting to expand their footprint, or
they were sponsoring Travis Carter, and they pretty much owned our team. Johnny Hayes was, they didn't want corporations owning the teams back then, so they gave Johnny Hayes the money and he ran the team. Yeah. But U.S. Tobacco really called the shots and did everything.
Right. So who was Johnny? Like, I think most people nowadays probably wouldn't recognize that name.
Well, and Johnny, I don't know where, to tell you the truth, I don't know where he came from. He probably wasn't a racer. I don't think he was a racer. He was more of a businessman kind of a guy, a fun guy, very smart, but he just, he pretty much he ran everything for U.S. Tobacco back then. Really liked Johnny. I mean, Johnny would go out of his way to help you, to do anything for you and stuff.
Yeah. Tell me about, you'd stay there for a little while, but then you'd end up leaving that team. How'd that come about?
I left at the beginning of '87. It was right there. And it kind of caught me off guard. Like I said, there was probably some more friction between Benny and I that I knew. I didn't know about, because I was just busy working on cars and doing stuff. We were getting cars ready and stuff. Like I said, we'd run a couple of races right there. We go to lunch, and I come back, and Tex Powell's sitting in my office. And I walked in, and he said, "Can I help you?" And I go, "I guess not." And I walked out. This is like just over lunch. And I go in there, and Johnny goes, I said, "Johnny," I said, what happened? What's going on?" He said, "Well, Benny wants to make a change right there." And so we got Tex. I said, "Well, I guess I need to look for it." He said, No, don't worry about it. He said, "You just go out there and work in the shop. We'll see how this goes." And I go out there and work in the shop, because you're kind of blindsided,
right?
And before the day's over, Johnny walks back out there, and I guess him and Tex had talked or something. He said, "Look," he said, "yeah, this probably ain't gonna work out." He said, "We'll give you 2 weeks pay right there." He said, "We'll pay you for 2 weeks." He said, "But just don't bother to come in. Just go home." I was okay. So I went home.
Was this here, or was this later? Because
it was there. When we were here, we had a guy that helped us, and his dad was a cabinet builder, and he came in and built cabinets. Most of the wooden frame stuff you'll see is things that he did and stuff. He had real nice cabinets all down through here and stuff. Now, they've added on some back here and stuff since we were here.
Right. That is super cool. Did y'all have a dyno in here, or was it?
No, no. Leo Jackson did all the motors up at his shop. He built the motors and just brought them down to us,
right
down here from Asheville.
Okay.
But we just did the cars and stuff here, and we had mostly Banjo Matthews cars and stuff. I think everything we had was his. I called Humpy Wheeler, and I asked Humpy what was going on, what needed to go, and what needed to do, and he told me to call Alan. So I called Alan. I went over there, and Alan was a really good guy, very smart, but he was hard to work for, because he was his own everything. I mean, he called shot on everything. And I mean, I don't care if it was, painting a jack stand. You couldn't just tell the guys paint a jack. He had to be involved in every single thing right there. It was hard. And we were building a set of, we actually went and we ran okay at Daytona. It was first, over the winter, it was first time right there. And then
y'all went a pole?
We went to Richmond right after that and sat on the pole. And I got a bad case of the flu or something. I was very sick. And race morning, I laid in the truck, wrapped up in blankets in the back of the truck. I mean, I came out to pit road once or twice and just laid in the truck. I felt like I was going to die. But, and we got back and we went to a couple of races, and we were building a set of tailpipes. And like I said, Alan, it was so involved in everything. It just wore you down. And we were in there trying to build a set of tailpipes, and we needed, like some 45-degree angles or something like that. He said, well, I got these 90s or something like that. I said, well, I need some 45s and everything. He said, well, that'll be okay, and I said, well, whatever. And everything, and it got out. I said, look, I said, it's been fun here and there like that. I said, but I can see right now that this isn't going to last all year, and there's no need. And while we're still friends and everything, let's just call it quits. I went outside. He come out there and tried to talk me into staying there, but I said, it may not be today. If it ain't today, it's going to be next week or the week after that. I said, this isn't going to last. So I left and I quit, which I was so used to people coming to and offer me jobs back then. I was too ignorant, stupid, or whatever to just realize what I had.
Right.
And I just thought jobs would come to me. Well, they didn't come to me after that. I sat there for 3 months with no job. And finally, Cale and them called me, and I went over to Cale's.
So I'm saying, is that an old setup plate over there? Did y'all have setup plates here?
We had them. I don't know if that could be one.
Okay.
Yeah, there's 2 of them over there.
So that must be the original one right there.
Yeah.
Dang.
There's 2 setup plates over there.
Wow. That is super cool.
It's amazing all this stuff's still here.
Right. Dang. And these where you ran your welders up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, you got outlets right there and stuff. We had 220s dropping down. There's probably a 220. And we had cars before they put the plates in here, you had a car on each side of that stuff stacked down through there.
Cale Yarborough's on the tail end of his career. And,
yeah.
I don't know if he's racing for fun or if he's just racing for wins, but, he's not running a full schedule at that point, but he's racing, I think it's a 29 car. Is that right?
Yeah. He ran the 29 car, which he had Hardee's with the 28 over Verniers, and Hardee's, of course, he had Hardee's with him. He owned, last time I talked to him, he had owned like 25 Hardee's. And so they were pretty much tied to him. He brought them over with their money started. He bought the old Race Hill Farms team and started that. And I think Jake was over there and left. So that's what they hired me over. I was pretty much following Jake around a lot of these places. But it was interesting working for Cale. Now, Cale, he was really a good driver. But you mentioned maybe he was doing it for the fun of it or something. Yeah. Cale didn't do anything for the fun of it. He came to that racetrack to win. And if he didn't think he had a chance to win, he just didn't go home. I mean, we weren't running for points. We were there to try and win the race. And if you had trouble in the race, one little thing, like if you got a lap down, we just loaded in the trailer and come home. Because there's no need. You knew you weren't going to win the race. And all you do is stand a chance of wrecking the car and costing you money. You're not going to do anything out there. So, we would come home. We never fixed the car. Wow. When we were there.
Wow. That shows you how much of a tough-nosed racer he was.
Oh, yeah. Cale, other than like Tim Richmond with the raw talent, but Cale had something that Tim didn't. And Cale had the ability to get more out of the car than anybody that I knew. Now, Cale, which was a big surprise to me, he wasn't knowledgeable about the car. He didn't know about the suspension and stuff on the car. We would go to Charlotte, and we had sat on the pole and about won the race with Benny Parsons and stuff. And I throw the setup under the car, and every driver takes depends on how hard they charge the corner, the entrance to the corner, stuff like that. It takes a different setup for different drivers. And we put Benny's setup in there. We were like tail end of the field. This was at the open race over there. David If came over. And he saw how bad we were running. And he goes, what kind of setup you got in that car? And I told him, he said, oh, you can't run that with Cale. And we switched springs during the break right there. And we went and ran fine right there. But I'd never worked with a driver before that couldn't tell you if the car was pushing or loose. I mean, he couldn't tell you. We're out there, we're 0.3 of a second off. And He said, I can't, I don't know anything you can do to the car, make it any better.
Man.
I hadn't worked with that before, but that was an eye opener for me right then. But whatever you gave him, he got more out of it than anybody and never complained. We were at Talladega practicing, and you started running 500 and 550 rear springs, and I think we put 600s in the back, trying to make faster and faster, and we put 650s in there or something like that. And he came in, and I said, "Well, how was that?" He said, "Was it faster?" Yeah, I go, "Yeah, not really." He said, "If it's faster, I can hang on to it. I mean, if it's faster, I'll do it. But if it ain't faster, no." He was on the verge of wrecking the car, but he would do whatever it took to go fast. It didn't matter to him. He was probably the most fearless guy I've ever been around. This used to be our break room.
Was there a wall here?
Huh?
Was there a wall here?
Yeah, there was a wall here, and you had an opening right there, and that was, we had a parts room and a break room.
Really?
In here. It was funny. We had one of the cars out here, and we were going to the racetrack with, I believe it was ABC.
Yeah.
Was going to have a camera in our car.
Oh, wow.
That way, I can't remember if it was ABC or CBS. I believe it was ABC. But they would come to the shop because it took so long to put the cameras in, install the cameras and the wiring and everything in the car.
Right.
That they came to the shop to install it. And we had a guy had a 55-gallon drum of gas and had one of those little electric pumps. And he clamped the ground to the hood pin, the deck lid pin back there. And he was pumping gas in the car. And the guy from the camera company, he was inside installing the camera. And he did turn and he knocked that alligator clip loose and it sparked. Oh, no. And about that time, he drugged that hose and gas all down the quarter panel, and it lit that quarter panel on fire with the guy inside the car. It lit the back of the car on fire, and it followed down. And I was in the parts room, and I came out and I hollered fire, and I grabbed a fire extinguisher, and I don't know if it was Andy Petrie, but somebody came across in front of me, and I mowed them down, and I ran straight for that barrel. And about that time—
Where was it? Was it here?
It was sitting right in that first stall right there.
Man.
Right where he is. And the fire went down that quarter, and it went right up the side of that barrel, and I ran right down to it. About the time it went woof like that, and I stuck the fire extinguisher down at the top of the barrel, and the fire went out. But if it hadn't been for that, I know it'd have burnt all this up and everything if that drum went off. Right there. And of course, it was white fire extinguisher stuff everywhere. It kind of crinkled the paint a little bit. We had to buff it out and get it because we were getting ready to load to go to the racetrack. And the guys from the camera company, they got out of the car. He got out of there quick when that fire come up like that. And they went to a big, long, early lunch break. He had to go clean his drawers after that.
Well, I was going to say, did they still have the camera in the car from that race? Or?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
We still ran the camera in the car and everything, but he was a little shaken.
Really?
The camera guy was, yeah. They're not used to, we see fire and stuff all the time. Race cars catch on fire and wreck and stuff. They're not used to seeing that kind of stuff, so it shook him up pretty good.
After that, 88, 89, you work for some smaller teams.
Yeah.
How'd you end up getting out of Cale's operation? And I believe you go and at some point you worked for Mike Curb.
Yeah.
I think in 88.
Well, that was probably back in, I'd say the Johnny Hayes deal back then was probably sort of the start of my decline in racing right there. It spoiled me in one way because we ran a partial schedule.
Yeah.
And I actually got to know my next door neighbors. You could go to dinner sometime or something like that. And I was playing on the lake and doing things. And it was fun running a partial schedule. We only ran, about 15 races a year or something, not a whole lot. So you could still have a good car and be competitive, but not have to do all that working around the clock. And right after that, I went to work for Cale. I was really good with the wind tunnels, doing stuff, and I had a pretty good grasp on aerodynamics. It was my own fault from, like I said, not being ready for the season, building all the cars. I concentrated on the Daytona car, and we went to Daytona and tested, and I brought some pieces, and it picked us up like 0.3 of a second, just like that. Everybody in the garage there was looking at us. We were really fast, and I went back, and the Oldsmobile came to it because we were running the new nose for the Oldsmobile when they downsized the Oldsmobile, and I spent a lot of wind tunnel time. They gave us time. I developed the nose for Oldsmobile to run that wind tunnel. that new nose right there. And it picked us all up, but we weren't ready for the season because I'd spent too much time on that Speedway car. And we went to Daytona, and we were running like second to Darrell Waltrip in the 125, and went to take the lead. And we went underneath it of Darrell. Darrell was driving the old full-size Monte Carlo, and we were driving that new downsized Oldsmobile. And it took the air off the nose. We didn't know all that stuff back then. It took the air off the nose, and the car started to push up. And then when he got up to the front of him, the air, he's in that bubble going around the car. And when he gets up by the front of him, he breaks into that air, and it planted the nose, and he's already got the wheel turned because he's trying not to wash up into Darrell. And when it planted the nose, he spun out and wrecked, tore the car all to pieces. So we had to get a backup car out. Then we were going to have to run the next race with the old Oldsmobile. And they came to him and said, "You're an Oldsmobile team. We're going to drop you if you run the old car." They came to me and said, "Look, this isn't going to work." Which it was my own fault for not having the cars prepared for the next year. But we had lost, not to make excuses, but we had lost. My right-hand man was Tracy Reed at the shop, and Cale had made a deal with him to, he didn't pay him a whole lot, but he was going to furnish him with an engine to run his ARCA car a couple of races. And at Talladega, Tracy, he spun at Talladega and hit the wall sideways on the backstretch and killed him right there. And that pretty much knocked the wind out of the sails for everybody on the team. And nobody wanted to work after hours or nothing, and I didn't push it, so we weren't ready over the winter, but just, things happened, and it was my fault for not waking up and seeing these things. But it should be this, the doors are all gone. There used to be offices all down.
I can see where.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you can see the imprints.
Yeah, it used to be right there. Right. And stuff, so.
Oh, this is, to get in here, you'll actually go through this door on the
Now,
right.
what's in there?
They turned it into a server room.
Server room? Okay. Yeah. Yes, it was probably, my office was probably right here, and the door was up there. This door wasn't here. It had all that in there.
Wow. You end up doing really one final full-time season as a crew chief in the Cup Series, right, in 1990 with Terry Labonte. Is that right?
Yeah. Leo's brother, Richard Jackson, called me, and they wanted me to come over there. So I went over there with Terry Labonte and stuff. Terry was a good guy. I mean, it's really it's easy when you work with good drivers, good, talented drivers, experienced drivers, because they know the field, they know what they're looking for and stuff, and they can really, they help point you in the right direction, because, I mean, you go to them, okay, I'm looking at the spring travel. Do we need a spring up here? Do we need a shock? Or do we need, I say, well, I'm thinking it's more of a sway bar feel. Okay, so you try that, and it helps, it speeds up the process a whole lot. We won the Atlanta race and came home, and they had banners all across the fence out there from people, congratulations and all that. So, right.
Are these awnings here when you were here, or was this just where you parked the hauler?
No. All the haulers, we'd wash the cars out there and stuff, and they came back, but we usually parked the hauler along here. It was along the back of the lot before they built all this extra back here, but you'd come in and come around and circle around, and then we'd go out that way and went to the racetrack. And then we started in both of them. We had to park one over to the side. Phil's truck, we'd park over the side, and park Benny's truck back here.
You did the 1990 season of Terry Labonte, and then I believe you go to work, was it TriStar with Chad Little? Is that what it was?
Yeah, I worked with Chad Little, and Chad was a good driver. Chad was talented. They didn't have any money at all, hardly. And we went to Daytona and ran okay, and we bought a car, or they had bought a car when I got there from Robert Yates, and one of their old cars, and we redid it and went to Bristol. And it was funny because we were running really good in practice with that car. Ran real good. We had a guy, it was a lot of volunteer help, and I told the guy for qualifying the stagger that I wanted, the difference in the right side, left side tires, your stagger right there, what I wanted. And Chad went out and about knocked the wall down. I mean, he went down and just drove. He did everything but hit the wall and wreck and qualifying, and came in. And like, what happened? He said, man, it wouldn't turn. It just went up to the wall. and everything. And like, man, I don't know what happened and everything. And I asked the guy, you know, did you get the stagger right and everything? He said, yeah. Well, I went out there and checked, and the right front tire only had about 20 pounds of air in it, and we run like 60 pounds of air in there. It only had like 20 pounds in there. I said, well, it's only got 20 pounds. Has it got a flat? He said, no, that's what I put in there to get this, make the stagger right. You know, he wasn't experienced. He didn't know. He just changed the air pressure to go. So we fixed it and ran good during the race. I mean, we led some of the race, and we're running like 4th or 5th or something like that, running in the top, you know. And there was a wreck, and we got tangled up in the wreck, tore the car up pretty good, and came home, and we had to get ready for the next race, and we were going to run that same car. So I went and we were building a new car over the side. They had a chassis sitting there, and our rear end housing was bent like crazy, and it was going to take hours, and we didn't have that because we had to be there the next weekend for the race. So I told the guys to grab the housing out of that car right there, and I'll straighten the other one later. You know, right now let's get that housing in there. And Chad's dad was running the team, and he came out and he saw that we just grabbed the housing out of the car. And a couple hours later, he called me in the office, and he said, look, I was going through the budget, and evidently I missed a few things, and we're not going to have enough money to run the season right there. And unfortunately, you're the highest paid guy here, so I'm going to have to let you go. Okay. First time you led a race, we're just doing a lesson. Okay. All right. So I was out. But after that, it was just, you know, it was hard to find a job then. So I ended up getting out after a while. You know, I helped a few people here and there. You know, Leo Jackson and Andy Petrie called me when they had the Skoll team, and they were like, we're busy racing all year long, but want to get our Daytona car ready. And you always give the Speedway. How about come up here and help us with our car, help us get the Speedway car together? You know, so I did that, and Larry McClure called me, and I went up there and worked with them with Tony Glover and stuff on the 4 car. I helped them out some, worked for them for a while, and stuff there. But I would go to both places and come home on the weekends. You know, I was married right there, so I'd work during the week, come home on the weekends.
He also, I believe, did some early Truck Series stuff real early on.
I went to work for Spears, for Wayne Spears out there. I ran his truck team out there in California, and then I did the truck team for Jimmy Smith. He caught up with me at Daytona, and I believe Andy Petrie is the one that pointed him towards me. He was looking for somebody. He wanted to start a team and doing that. So I went out to California and did the trucks for Jimmy Smith. We work on the old 66 to 77 Ford Broncos.
Right.
And this is pretty much what they look like when we get them.
Yeah.
Between that blue one right there and that orange one. People will bring us stuff that they had on a farm or their dad owned, and
right.
He's passed away, and now they want to build a Bronco out of it. They got the memories of riding in it as a kid.
Wow.
So we're pretty much booked up 2 years out.
No way.
So some of these trucks been sitting here. That orange truck has probably been here 2 or 3 years.
Really?
4 or 5 years, been sitting here.
Man.
And we just built this new body shop back here.
Right.
That's only been there about a year. But you can buy a whole new body like this from Carpenter. They sell, you can buy every piece of it brand new like this and build you a Bronco.
Wow.
Or you can take one like this, which it looks better now, but this was an old rust bucket and stuff, and we had to replace all the rocker panels and the sides, the floor pans. Everything was just, the bottom quarter panels had to be replaced in it. All this stuff here was cut out. That's why this stop's holding this up, because there was nothing, all this was gone.
Man.
And we had to put all this in and mount the doors and do everything to it.
These over here, these are, I guess they're not quite finished, but they look a lot closer to being finished.
Well, this one over here is a truck we built years ago for a local guy. We call him Dr. Drew.
Okay.
And he sent it back down, and we did some touch-up work on it and stuff. But this is a brand new one right here that we're finishing up. It's a pretty truck to me.
It is.
It's real pretty, but that's going to be nice when it gets all finished. And this is the roll cages. We got our own templates. We build all our own roll cages. We build the back half on a template right here on a jig, and then we put this in the truck and then build the rest of it from there, because it's got to fit the roof so much.
Right.
They're all different.
Wow.
Now this is a truck right here that we built for a guy. We delivered it about 4 years ago. And he's got a bunch of cars, a guy up in Virginia.
Yeah.
And super nice guy, but he's had some stuff and personal stuff come up in his life. I think some health stuff, and he's wanting us to sell it for him. So he sent it back there. It's only got 2,000 miles on it. He's had it for 4 years, got about 2,000 miles on it. But that is a beautiful truck.
So if you're in the
Right
market,
there.
if you're in the market for a pristine Bronco,
Yeah,
I got one for you. I know a guy.
it's got the full roll cage in it and everything. It's a beautiful truck.
Yeah.
Nice leather interior in it.
Wow.
Got the automatic steps on it and everything.
Yeah. I guess this was such a popular generation of Bronco, but they really, you know, with the new Broncos now, they really,
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously very different underneath the hood and suspension-wise and whatnot,
Oh, yeah.
but
Yeah, I'll-
styling-wise, it looks
I'll
the
show
same.
you. This one, it's got all dirty and dusty sitting in here.
Yeah,
But it does, it's nothing like the old Broncos anymore.
right.
This motor here was started out as a 302, but it's a stroker motor. It's a 347 now.
Oh, man.
So it runs pretty good.
Right.
It's pretty good. And I'll show you the interior of one of these things.
Oh, yeah. This looks very modern in here.
Yeah. And you see the automatic electric steps come out, make it convenient to get in. Got the full roll cage, and you can see even in the top up there.
Oh, yeah. Definitely old school cool on the outside with the modern conveniences on the inside.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
So these are basically your top of the line Bronco. I don't want to, I guess they're a resto mod maybe.
Probably so.
Yeah.
Probably so. And we like that one I'm working over there now, that's a girl owns that one, and we're building it back bone stock for. It's got a 6-cylinder in it, and it's staying that way. We're just giving her something just to drive around.
Wow.
You know, just a fun little thing. So, I mean, yeah, the trucks, like that brown truck we were looking at, I'm showing you,
Yeah.
175,000.
I believe it. I believe it.
Yeah, and we've built a couple of them in here. They're close to 250.
Wow.
Just because they ordered a kit frame that was a 4-link chassis that came in. It already had a Coyote motor with a 10-speed transmission behind it, stainless steel gas tank, and then we put the truck together. We built the body and did everything else from here. But it came in as like a kit chassis. You know, when you're racing, you're pretty much consumed with everything. And I had gotten married probably, I think it was in like 85, I think, when I got married. And we're talking like in 1990 now or something, or later than that, probably 93, somewhere along in there. But you know, I got out of racing. You know, like I said, it had dried up, and I started a marine business, and I was rebuilding my house, remodeling the house and stuff. And my wife at the time, her mom had died, and pretty much from the time her mom died, our marriage just went downhill. You know, it just turned cold, and I didn't realize how bad it was, because like I said, you're still having to work all the time and do stuff. And then I got the call one night. She told me, she says, hey, look, I'm not happy. Well, how bad is it? She says, well, I'm leaving. So, well, you're leaving. So we talked about it, and actually, the way it happened was I had dated a girl in California when we were back racing all the time. And she called me in the middle of the night, like 2 or 3 o'clock, and said, hey, Cliff. I said, she says, Mary, you doing okay? I said, yeah, I'm fine. She said, I'm sorry to hear about you and your wife. I said, well, what do you mean? She said, I heard your wife left you. No, she's laying right here beside me. She said, well, I said, well, how'd you hear that? Well, my wife worked for a company. She went to work for Ricky Rudd's sister that had a marketing company. And she did all the budget for them, and they did all the show cars for Johnson & Johnson, I guess it was. And no, it wasn't them. Procter & Gamble. They did it for Procter & Gamble. Mm-hmm. And they had all these show cars. And she said that they were at the mall talking to one of the show car drivers, and he told her, she says, yeah, I know Cliff Champion from racing and stuff. He said, oh, well, his wife, and he's the one that told her my wife was leaving me. So that's when, that night I asked about, well, how's it going? She said, well, I'm not happy. And I learned about it. And I had pretty much, I got out of racing. I could have stayed in racing, but I saw that you don't get much time with family. It's no way to raise a family racing. You don't get to know your kids. I mean, the mom raises your kids and stuff. So I kind of wanted to get out anyway. And I quit racing, started a marine business, doing docks and things like that. And, when you start a business, money's tight and all. And like I said, I guess she wasn't happy and stuff, and I really didn't know it. But when she told me that night that she was leaving, I had pretty much quit racing for her and stuff, for our marriage. And I was devastated. So I got up and went through the house and took everything I could find. I had I took like 2 bottles of Tylenol and found a bottle of codeine, some kind of medicine with codeine in it. I drank that. I mean, anything I could take, I could find. I took it. And I went back to bed, and I figured I just wouldn't wake up the next morning. And about halfway through the night, what first thing that happens is you start losing your muscle control. And I'd be sitting there, and all of a sudden I'd twitch, my leg would kick or something like that. And after a while, she goes, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "Nothing, I'm fine." And then later in the night, she knew something was wrong, so she called and rushed me down to the hospital. And they pump your stomach and do all these things and stuff. And then they send you back on your way. So I come home and we talk about it, and she decided that she wants to leave. And I come to find out, well, she didn't know what she wanted to do at the time. She didn't know what she wanted to do. So I had just tried to commit suicide. And, within a month later, she comes to me, and one of the girls she works with, her husband is flying a helicopter for the hospital. And she said, "He's out of town, and I'm gonna go over spend the night with her to keep her company." I'm like, "Geez, your husband just tried to commit suicide, and you're gonna go spend the night with her and everything?" So I thought about it. I said, "Yeah, something ain't right." So, probably 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, I drive by their house, and her car ain't there. So later on, I called and asked her to meet me. And it turns out that she had had a boyfriend. And they'd been together for 2-3 months, something like that. So I guess you kind of lose all of your interest in working and doing everything. And it was a wintertime, dock business slowed down. I was in the middle of remodeling the house. Everything was going on. Didn't have hardly any money coming in. And I was just really majorly depressed and stuff. So the first time was like in October. And then in November, the second time, I really went down. In November, and a lot of people don't realize that all this stuff happens at nighttime. Most of your suicide attempts or anything happens late at night. When the daylight comes and it's a new day, and you think the possibilities, I'll get me a job today or whatever. And then at nighttime, it doesn't come, and you're right back where you were, and you kind of sink down back into that depression again. And that's where most of your stuff happens during the night. But the second time, I went and I had 2 bottles of sleeping pills in the truck. And I took those. And one of the guys that worked at U.S. Tobacco with Skoll and everything, he had given me a bottle of Captain Morgan's rum right there. And this was Christmas. I took that and washed it all down with that bottle of rum and expected to go to bed and not get up again. And I don't remember any of it. It's just what they told me. But Gary Brooks, which Terry Brooks' husband, right there, they lived across the street like 2 houses over. And he came over knocking on the door. because I guess it was during the day and they didn't see any movement or anything, and they knew I was going through a lot. So he called another friend, Johnny Bruce, that worked for U.S. Tobacco. He lived around the corner, and they came over and knocked on the door, and I didn't answer. Wouldn't answer the door or anything, so they called the police. They came and busted in. And they said when they busted in the door, and they said I came walking around the corner naked with my eyes rolled back in my head. And so I guess they put me on a stretcher and took me. I was in a coma for 3 days. And the third day I came out of the coma, and the doctor came in. And he said, son, he said, let me tell you something. He said, you shouldn't be here. He said, you took more than twice enough to kill you. He said, I don't know why you're here. He said, but it wasn't me that saved you. He said, if you're here for some reason, you need to figure that out. You need to figure out why you're here. So I didn't think a whole lot of it at the time. And I guess a week went by, and Phil Parsons called me. He was starting his new Bush team, and he wanted me to come over and be his crew chief. And the first day at work, I went to Phil. I said, Phil, I said, look, I said, I ain't doing real good. I said, I need somebody to talk to or something. I said, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I'm not the stupidest guy either. I said, I've had 3 attempts right now. I said, sooner or later, I'm gonna get it right. I said, so, he said, well, I got just a person for you to talk to. And he went in the office, and he came back a few minutes later. He said, you need to go to the Speedway and talk to Max Hylton over Motor Racing Outreach, which is the ministry for the racing community. My first off was like, man, you know, I mean, it's only me and him. You know, there wasn't any workers, just me and him. We're trying to get ready for Daytona. And this is right at the beginning of January, right there. We don't have long to get ready. And, he said, Max, you need to go over there and be there at 1 o'clock or something. I said, well, we got too much work to do. He said, no. He said, you need to go on over there. He said, we'll get the car ready. Don't worry about it. And I got over there and talked to Max. And he just listened to me and told, heard the story. He said that the next Thursday they were going to Hilton Head. They have a retreat at the end of the season every year. And all the racers, a lot of the racers go down there, and they have speakers from all over the country go down. He said, we've got people that'll pay for it. He said, don't worry about getting down there. And Bobby Hillin called me. His wife was pregnant, so she wasn't going to go. So I rode down with Bobby Hillin, shared a room with him. And the first day down there, I heard these speakers speak. And I never was religious before that, or spiritual, whatever you want to call it. But I didn't have any feelings either way. And somebody asked me one time, said, how do you feel about God? I thought, I don't feel one way or the other. I mean, I'm busy racing. It's like the sun comes up and goes down no matter what. I have no feelings about it. I said, how do you feel about the prices of tomatoes over Somalia? They go, what? I said, same thing. I got no feeling. I got, no feelings one way or the other. But I got down there and listened to these guys speak. And these are some of the top speakers in the country that they have come to that thing. And I went from crawling around on the floor, not only wanting to die, but trying to die, to smiling and like, man, this is great. And at the end of that first day, Max Hylton called me down to his room. It was him and Ron and Jackie Pigram, which worked for MRO. And Max asked me, he says, what do you think? I said, man, this is the greatest thing I've ever heard. He says, this is great. He said, how'd you like to feel this way all the time? I said, I'm in. So we sat there and prayed the prayer right there in that motel room at Hilton Head. And I gave my life to Christ then. And it changed my whole life right there. It's strange how it does that. But and some people, you kind of say you go through the motions, but when you're as low as I was, You know, I mean, if you're rich, you're a multimillionaire, and everything's going perfect, it may not be a big difference for you when you give your life to Christ. But when you're where I was, to give your life to Christ, it was a great big difference.
Right.
You know, it gave me purpose in life. It comforted me. It got me out of depression and stuff. Now, don't get me wrong, there were still tough days. Like when I wanted to work for Phil, and later on I found out Phil was on the board at MRO, is why he sent me there. But I'd be working, and I'd stay working late, 10, 11 o'clock at night, because I didn't have nothing to come home to. And one night, it sets in, and you're depressed. And I know it was probably 10 o'clock at night, and I knelt down behind one of the race cars. So I was by myself. I knelt down one of the race cars, and I was crying. And I had cried out to God to help me. And while I'm down there, the phone rings, and it's Lake Speed. And Lake was like, Cliff, I don't know what you got going on, but God told me to call you. 10 o'clock at night, right out of the blue. Like, and Lake, I knew him around the racetrack, but didn't really know him, you know. And that happened a couple of times. You really get down and like, man, you start having these thoughts, and the next thing you know, somebody would call, just like that, and lift you right up. But it made all the difference in the world to my life and everything.
As we conclude our time today, one question that I ask everybody who I talk to, and I think you're going to probably have a different answer than a lot of people, just based on your story. And that's one of the reasons I was so excited to talk to you, is I always ask people, what do you want your legacy to be? And, we've talked about your entire NASCAR career and racing career, and you've had another career outside of that, beyond NASCAR.
Yeah.
But you just shared a very powerful story. So if you can just think about your life, and maybe, if some kid 40, 50, 60 years in the future sees this, what should Cliff Champion's legacy be?
Well, I never really thought about a legacy before, because I'm just me. I'm just your average old guy right there. But I hope people remember me as being a good guy, a nice guy. One thing that I want to bring up is when I was still married and going through the stuff, or when she had left. And the first thing you want to do is you pray to God to please bring her back. Please bring my wife back. And then after reading through the Bible and learning, God, the Holy Spirit gave me the knowledge of my prayer changed to God, and it was like, okay, God, maybe, your plan for me could be different. So if you're not going to bring her back, then you have to give me the strength to get through this, because the best I can do is crawl around the floor wanting to die. That's the best I can do. You're going to have to give me the strength to get through it if you're not going to bring her back. And that was a big turning point right there. And I was single for 17 years. And people would ask me, they go, man, you think you'll ever get married again? I said, if I met the right person, I'd get married next week. And I never met the right person for that 17 years, and I finally did. And remarried, and big change in my life. I married somebody that has my interest at heart. She was just going through a divorce, and we just complimented each other. And I found out what true love was all about in a relationship and stuff. So we have each other's back no matter what. That's made a big difference. Nobody's perfect, especially not me. You can't really use me much to gauge off of, but I hope people realize what a difference God has made in my life. Chase your dreams and stuff, to see that I went from nothing to being a crew chief. And I did it because I guess I was ignorant enough to think that you could just go do that. Don't give up on your dreams, and just keep trying.